Sorry, my mic was muted. Hello, everyone. My name is Waza Banda. I am from Zambia and I am a second year computer science student at the University of Zambia. So, the purpose of this workshop or walkthrough per se is basically just to give a brief overview of the Unity game engine and how you can go about making a game with the engine. We're not going to make a full game. I think I only have like today and Friday, so it won't be a full game per se. But hopefully, uh, with these 2 hours that we have, I can get you from installing Unity up to you being a bit comfortable with using the engine, so that not everything looks new when you inevitably try to make your game either for the Gamathon or your own personal projects. Yeah, so I'll be sharing some learning resources after this and all that. But basically, let's get into it. I'm not sure if the host will let me remove my camera. Yeah, my internet connection is rather bad, but it's my screen being shared. Okay, so the first thing that you would want to do when it comes to working with Unity is, of course, installing Unity. And to do that, you just want to go to unity3d.com / get Unity and then download. You can just search Unity download on Google and just the first link that comes up, go on to download. And you want to download Unity Hub specifically. Now, these are the operating systems that are supported for Unity. And you just want to get Unity Hub for your operating system. And with this, after you go about with the full installation process, you'll be met with something like this. Now, if it's your first time installing Unity Hub, it will ask you if you're new to Unity. And luckily, if you do that, it just do all the installations for you. It will install the latest LTS version, everything for you. But if not, you want to go under installs, then install editor, and then under the editors, you want to choose editor version that you want to use. Now, when it comes to working with Unity, it's always good to go for the latest LTS version. So, which the long-term support version is basically supported for a few years. So, if you want to work on a project consistently, you want to choose long-term support version. So, it's even recommended over there, and then you can just go on install. Now, when installing Unity, there are a few things that you want to. There are a few things that you want to use. There are a few things that you want to click here, but the main important thing is what text editor will you be using. In this case, Visual Studio 2019 is needed as your primary text editor. Everything else will be installed for you. And the good thing about Unity is that it's basically supported by almost every platform. So whether as in exporting, so you can export it to Android, your final project, so all these different platforms. But once you just install the basic stuff, the necessary stuff required for your operating system will be installed alongside it. So you don't really need to worry much. So after that, you just go and continue, and then it will walk you through the installation process. But after your installation is done, which can take a while based on your internet connection, if your internet connection is like mine, so it will take you quite some time. But afterwards, all you need to do is open the Unity editor once you're done. And for the first time when you open the Unity editor, this is what you'll be met with. So this is what you'll be met with when you open the Unity editor. Now, there are a few things here. There are a few things on the screen here, so don't get worried. Also, if it's your first time, you have a very bad light theme, but you can always go and change that over in preferences. You can go over in preferences and then just change the theme from light to dark. And then afterwards, yeah, so you have something like this. Now, there are a few windows that you can work with when it comes to working with Unity. You have the hierarchy. Just minimize that. You have the hierarchy, which is what you use to view objects in your scene. And then you have the scene view. This is where you build your level. This is where you build everything involved in your game. Whether you're building your UI, you're building your levels, everything you do it in the scene view. And then you have the game view. This is why you preview your game whenever you're playing it. And it always takes the point of view of the main camera, which is this right here. So anything you add to the scene view will be viewed in the hierarchy. Then you have your projects page. This is where you handle stuff like files and all that. So whenever you import assets into your game, be it scripts, be it art, 3D models, etc., etc., everything goes into this view right here. And then you have the inspector, and the inspector is what you use to view more information about an object in your scene. So for instance, we have our camera here, and every game object you create, and to create a game object you just go create empty there. This creates an empty game object. So every game object you create will always have a transform component which dictates its position, rotation, and scale in the world. So this is a 3D engine, but today of course we're working with 2D. So yeah, I think Michael will walk you through how to do a 2D game later on. Then yeah, so on these game objects you can add things called components, which if you're not new to programming, they're basically just classes on their own. And if you're familiar with object-oriented programming, it means you can basically manipulate anything you see here. So when you start looking at the code per se, I'll walk you through how you can manipulate things in different scripts and all the like. So yeah, this is just a basic overview, and the final thing is the console. The console, this will be your best friend when you're working with Unity, because it basically lets you preview anything from any errors from your scripts to just the general debugging in your code and all that. Let me just make sure I am in and I have not been booted out. Okay, so what game are we going to be making here? So I was actually seated and thinking of a game that we can make, and it's gonna be a very simple game, something we can knock up in a couple of hours. I know we won't be able to finish the full thing, but hopefully the main mechanics and just the basic overview of how to work with Unity will be covered when we do this. So the idea for the game I have is basically you're in between a board like this, right? So say for instance this will be for instance this over here will be, we can think of it as a road. So a road has different lanes, and then over here we'll have cars coming on different lanes, and we'll find a way to, we'll actually talk about how to randomly position these cars so they'll appear in random patterns. So it can appear like this, they can be like this and this, and they'll be evenly spaced out, and then you as the player over here will just have to dodge these cars. So there'll be these three different lanes over here, and your goal and task will be to actually avoid all these different cars that are coming up and all the like. So yeah, this is the main game idea. This is the main game idea that we're going to work on. Share this. So yeah, with that being said, let's get into Unity. Share the link. Okay, so how are we going to do this? So I'm just going to move around the scene because I'm not used to working with it like this. So the Unity scene is completely customizable, and you can just drag a window like that by holding this part over here and then just dragging it and then resizing things to how you want them to look. So the way I prefer doing this is just I have my game scene over there, and you can customize this based on your workflow. And there are a lot of other windows, whether you want to work with animation, etc., etc. But yeah, I just like customizing it like this. Reduce that over there, and then for the aspect ratio, what's your target aspect for your game? So you can choose between the pre-decided aspect ratios here, or you can also just add your own. So for me, I was thinking that this game would fit more mobile screen, so I chose a 10:16 aspect ratio, something like this, and the game camera actually fits to that aspect ratio. So as long with this, we'll be able to easily design our game. So I created this empty game object, and let me just delete it. So the main camera there, just the scene, the view of the game. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to create an empty game object. So this one will not have anything on its own. What this guy will have is it will be a container for our level. So I'm just going to call it level or board. You can call it whatever you want. I will create a GitHub for this afterwards, but we're going to have that there. And then in here, what I'm going to put in here is some level bounds. So whenever I'm prototyping a game per se, I just prefer having oh, and I am so sorry for this. Uh, I missed out a very crucial part of the process. To actually create a project, you're supposed to go on a new project over here, and then choose a template that you want to choose over here. There are a lot of different templates whether you want to learn, but the one specific for this one is the 2D core. So that's the one. That's the one we're working with. Then just go on new projects. So we call it whatever you want to call it. Then the destination and all that, and then just create project, and then you need to go over creating that. Yeah. Hopefully, I didn't lose a lot of people on that one. Really sorry. But yeah, yeah, but everything onwards just carries on from what we've already discussed. So, um, our level there, we're going to add we're going to add a bound. So, going off my design over here, we're going to have something like a 2D boundary. So, let me just check thing. Okay, we're not muted. Okay. So we're going to have a 2D boundary, right? So these are going to be squares. So it's always nice to just prototype everything using stuff like squares and all the like. So under our level, I'm going to go create. I'm going to right click, then go under here 2D sprites and then square, right? I'm going to create a square game object. So whenever you're working in 2D, remember I said the different components on different sprites all relate to a class somewhere, and you can always go on add component and then do all of that there. You can add component, you can search up for a component. In this case, this is a sprite. So it's a sprite, and sprites just handle 2D images in your game mode. So I'm going to have a sprite there, and then through square, I'm just going to rename it to bound. So this will be the bound of our level, right? And then I'm just going to drag this guy over here and then increase its size. So we're just going to do that there to have a visual bound of our level. There's a better way of doing this, but yeah, for now we're just gonna do this. So yeah, so we have a visual bound of our level, and then I'm just going to add more. So these are different tools that you have. This one is for moving, rotating an object, scaling it. This one is a Rex transform, so you're given more like those corners there that you can easily move, you can easily change the size, and this one is very good when you're working with sprites. But then we're going to add some bounds, and this guy over here should go to the bottom. So I'm just using my middle mouse button like that, holding it down and then panning around the scene. So that's how you can pan around the scene. Everything else, you just left click to click on something to select something, hold it and dragging it, and then yeah, middle mouse button to just navigate around your scene view like that. So now that we've positioned our bounds somewhere there like that, remember our game said it will have more like different lanes, right? So and then the player will be able to move in between these lanes. I think the easiest game I can give is Subway Surfers, something like that. We're going to be making something similar to that. So what I'm going to do is we have our bounds here, and then let me just go and create another. So I'm just going to create another empty, and this is automatically added as a child, and then I'm going to call it bound holder, right? I'm going to call it bound holder. This is an empty game object, and it's just going to hold our bounds. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to define the players' positions in our world. What players the position can occupy is our lanes, in short. So we're going to say we're going to create an empty game object, and then we'll call it lane. Right, we're going to call it our first lane. It's going to be right there. That will be our first lane, and then we're just going to move it down a bit. We're going to move it here. I'm going to move it all the way down here. You can also just manually position here. So I'm going to set it at -3, and then another one there. Its X position, let's set it at 5. Okay, let's set it at 2. 1.5 would be good, and then this other one here, it's just going to be on the opposite end, so negative 1.5, like that. So yeah, I'm assuming everything is set up quite nicely. Okay, so these will be the different lanes in which our player will be allowed to move in. So we will just hold the positions in which we're going to snap the player to whenever we're playing the game. So now to add in our player. Now, before we're using prototype art, which is just very simple to the art. We haven't actually implemented the full art of our game just yet. So we're going to go and create a circle. I'm just going to create a circle and call this guy player. And then we're going to set it at position 0, 0. At position 0, 0. And then like I'm going to set it at position negative 1, 5, like that. Okay, so we're going to set it at position negative 3. So this would be its starting position, and then we want it to snap to this position and then to this position. Now, by going further, we're just going to reduce the size of our player. So to reduce the scale, we're going to set it to negative 0, 0.5, 0.5, and then the z-axis is not very important for scale because we're working in a 2D environment. But the next thing we're going to do here is, well, I'm just going to hit play. So I'm just and whilst we wait for that, let's just wait for that to play. Unity can be slow sometimes, so if you do intend on working with Unity, this will be a very, I can say, usual occurrence. Yeah, so you just have to get used to this one aspect of Unity. It's taking way longer than expected for a very simple game. Come on, Unity. Okay, this is very weird. Oh my goodness. Uh, of all times for this engine to, oh god, oh Yes, okay, I'm sorry for that. Yeah, so there's been a lot of dead air. Unity seems to be rather slow, using to play a very simple game. Don't know why. But anyway, whilst that does that, so that we don't lose any time, I think it would just be good for us to go over some basic Unity script structure. So whilst we wait for our Unity to decide and start playing, um, I'm going to go over how to create a script after whatever this is happening goes on. But to create a script in Unity, I'll do it over in the editor, but this is the basic script structure that you have. So those of you familiar with object-oriented programming concepts, this shouldn't be very difficult, especially for those of you used to using C Sharp. So Unity uses C Sharp, which is object oriented, and you basically just have a few common things that you always see whenever you open a new script. You have your start. This is the part of your code that is always run whenever the game starts. So whenever the game starts, this part of your code will always run, and then you have your update. The update runs every single frame. This is run every frame as you are working with Unity. So this is run every frame. So this is why you usually do things like moving a player, taking in user input, etc., etc. So anything that you need to be doing continuously, whether be it calculating some stuff, you always do it in your update options. So this is the main purpose of this. And then you also have other stuff like await, the void await. This guy right here is run before start. So you usually do this when you're initializing things that you want to use in the start. So this is run before the start method. So before start. And then you have other things like fixed update, late update, etc., that you use in other situations. But yeah, it's still compiling. Oh my goodness. Um, okay, so Unity, you can declare a variable. And when you declare a variable, it can either be private. So I'm pretty sure if you've used any object-oriented programming language before, it shouldn't be very new. But when you declare a variable, it can either be private, public, protected, default, etc. But the ones you're using the most for very simple projects would be private and public. So a private variable means it will not be visible in the inspector. And by visible in the inspector, what I mean is that over in the inspector, when we look at, let's say, our sprite render, we'll see all those different fields like flip, draw mode, etc. So all of those are public. They've been, okay, not exactly public, but they've been exposed to us in the inspector. So those are public. There are other properties, but those are private in the sense that you won't see them, right? So if something is private, it means you won't be able to see it. Thing might not even be visible. Let me stop my camera. Okay, I think that will increase internet connectivity. Why this is happening today of all days, I am not sure. So you have private over, you have public and then private. You're going to be using these the most. So um, when creating our player, when we want our player to be able to move between those different lanes that we've described. So we're going to create a variable for each of those different lanes. So I'm going to show you the naive way of doing it. So we have 3 lanes, and what we can do is that we can say public transform. We can say public transform, and then we can say lane 1, then lane 2, and then lane 3. Right? We can do this quite right. Yes, this is we are allowed to do this. It's not illegal, but in terms of efficient programming, this is a very bad move doing this. So say for instance we wanted to add 4 more lanes, wanted to add 5 more lanes. Well, we don't have to go in here, so lane 4, lane 5, etc., etc. So doing this is not the best approach. So a better approach would be to create what we call a list, or in this case, before I even got this, we're going to create an array. Now, an array in programming is basically a way of storing an X amount of objects in a single variable. So in programming, you have variables, etc., etc. So you store an array like that, and then we're going to call this lane. So this would be the part that would be this would be the main script that will be storing our lanes. So we're going to throw our lanes into this array, and then after this, we're going to keep track of the current player's lane. So we're going to say public index. So we're going to keep track of the current lane they're in by its index, right? So you can either be in the first lane, second lane, or third lane. So we're going to use that index in order for us to be able to say, okay, this is the lane in which the player is in, and all that. So when we do that, over here in our update method, we are going to need to take in user input from the player, right? For them to be able to choose, say, okay, I want to move to the first lane. You can use whichever ones you want to use. Say you can use WASD, you can use the arrow keys, but I'm used to using WASD. So to take in the input, you say if, and then Unity provides an input class for you. So you have to say input dot, and then there are a lot of different methods in here that you can use. Dot get key down, dot get button, dot get axis, etc., etc. And each of these does something, but we're also going to use dot get key down. And what dot get key down does is that whenever the player presses a specific button that we define, at the moment I press that button, which essentially becomes true when you hit this button, right? So in this case, we're going to say input dot get key down, and then the key down that we're going to say is A, right? We're going to say dot get key down A. So you can use a string, or better way is key code dot A. So basically, this is just the key code for on your keyboard, like just the encoding. So you can have keycode for any key on your keyboard, but in this case we're going to say keycode dot A. So, and then we're going to put it in that bracket. So when they press keycode dot A, we want to move them where? To the left, right? We always want to move them to the left. So we're going to say lane minus equals, of course we'll say lane is equal to lane minus 1. So always going to subtract 1 from the current lane. But yeah, so it's fine. We're just going to say lane minus equal 1. But before we do that, we're going to say if lane is greater than 0, right? As long as the lane is greater than or equal to 0, this is the only time we're going to let the player say, okay, we're going to say lane minus equals 1. This will move us 1 point to the left. And then we're going to say, now, this script inherits from something called mono behavior. And mono behavior is basically a class in Unity that attaches, is basically the way we define a component. So when we talked about that component and all, like we said, okay, we can have our sprite renderer component and all that. It's still compiling. This is gonna be a mess. But anyway, um, we can have our transform whenever we create a component, whenever we create a script, and I'll show you how to do that once Unity stops betraying me. When we say mono behavior, it means it's something you attach to a game object, and by virtue of you being able to attach to a game object, you can access things that are on the game object. And there are two things that will always be on every game object that you're always able to access. The first being the transform component. Transform. So there is a difference between transform and then this transform with a capital T. Transform with a capital T is an object, it's a type, a data type. Transform with a lowercase t is the transform that is attached to this game object or to whatever game object you're referring to in that instance. Then you also have game object, which is the same thing, which refers to the current game object this script is attached to, or whatever script you're referring to is attached to. And those things are somehow interchangeable because you can always say game object dot transform, or you can always say transform dot game object. It depends on how you want to do it. It depends on which one you prefer, but in this case, we're going to use transform. And then now we want to set the transform dot. So now the transform had position, rotation, and then scale. So what we want to set in this specific instance is the position of what we want to be able to set is the position of our player to the new position, right? So we're going to say transform dot position is equal to lanes, and then we're going to set it equal to I there, right? So transform dot position is then equal to lanes there. Lanes, and lanes will give us a position, so we're going to say dot. Since it's a transform, we're going to say the position where the transform is, right? So transforms, and then that should be lane. And then we're going to say the same, but when the player it's the, so if input dot get key down key code dot d, we're going to come and say if lane is less than, right? If lane is less than in fact, here we were not supposed to put the greater than or equal to sign, that will give us an error. So if lane is less than lanes dot length, right, the length of the total lanes there, minus 1. Okay, so lanes of length minus 1. So we basically just don't want to go beyond the final element in our list because that will give us some exceptions. We've also got on the lane plus equals 1 to move to the next lane, and then the same logic that we had over here. So the reason I'm doing this is that I don't want to be constantly updating the position every frame. But yeah, so this handles player movement. Now if Unity, I think I'm going to do something other, well, something not good, but let me just force shut down Unity and then we open it. People are friends over at the Godot side did not have such issues, but yeah, so let me just open up that project. and I'm almost running out of time. But anyway, hopefully the host will be would understand my play in this case. But yeah, I do apologize for anyone watching for this slight inconvenience. Though I do hope I'm not boring. I don't know. I usually ask this whenever I'm giving a talk or anything to see whether I'm not losing people along the way. Yeah. Okay. You finally decide to open on us Unity. Why did you? Oh, and we did not save our scene. Okay, interesting. Um. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to quickly recreate that. So level put our game scene right down there. The aspect. Square. We're gonna put our level right there. Okay, so I'll drag that all the way to the top there. Again. Okay, then we're going to set those positions again. So our lanes create empty. We're going to set them. Let's set this entire guard 0, 0, 0. Then we're going to move these down. Okay, so okay, so we're going to say -3 again, then 1.5, and then another -1.5. Okay, and then we're going to create our player object. So 2D by circle. Okay, then we're going to say so the way you create a script in Unity, so yeah, we're back. So the way you create a script in Unity is if whenever the reason you might have to create a script is of course whatever you're trying to do is not provided by Unity by default. So you want to add some behavior to your object. So one way of doing it is just to come and say before whatever you want to call your scripts, in this case player, and then it will ask you to create a new script called whatever you want to do. In this case, since I've already created that class, so class player already exists. But if you do this, it automatically throws the scripts in here. So it's always good to just come over here and then say right click C# script. In this case, we're going to call it game. We're going to come back to this guy later. So yeah, that creates a script by default that is added for you, and then you just have to drag. So from the inspector here, just drag and drop it onto your game object. Not again. Oh, okay. You just drag and drop it onto your game object like that. We can remove the component and then just come over here under components and say player, and then that should appear as a new component. So you can add your player there. So sorry. We're going to get our player over here. We're going to place our player anywhere in our world. And then what I'm going to do is under our player, under our lanes, we're going to set these lanes that we have the player. Now, when I try to just drag it like this, that automatically changes what I'm viewing there. So let's say we want to keep this window constant as I am dragging and dropping those references there, because it's just a matter of me just dragging whatever I want and then just putting it into my array. So the array was public, it was viewed there. So one thing you can do is that you can go right click and then do properties, and then this will more like give you a pop-up window like that. So pop-up window dedicated to just this component on its own, or an easier way if you don't want windows floating around, just to lock it there. So meaning even if you were to click any other object, the inspector window will be locked to this object alone. Yeah, so we're going to go there lane, and then we're just going to drag and drop our lanes over here, and then those will be automatically added to our array like that over there. So I'm going to arrange these in the order they are at. So this is at the center, so it should be here. Then this guy over here is at the very end, so I'm going to put it right at the bottom, and then this will go over here. Okay, so okay, so now that I have okay, so now we've done that, crossing my fingers, Unity does not yeah, go kamikaze on us again. But if I do hit play, crossing my fingers again, if I do hit play, this should run in less than 5 minutes, hopefully. Okay, so assuming all the code was right, when you press, so you can see, so right now I'm pressing A, and then I am able to change the position of the player like that. So, and if I try pressing D, holding down D for more and more along that will not allow me to go unless I press A. So yeah, so now we're able to change the more like the lane. We go back to the concept of the game. We go back to the concept of the game. So we want obstacles to be coming, right? We want an obstacle to come from here. They'll be randomly placed. Now, there are two ways we can achieve this random placing of obstacles and all that. One way is we can create all the individual instances of how these should appear. But for me personally, I'm a very lazy person. So what I prefer to do is well, let the game handle that deciding of what it wants to put for me automatically, because there are a lot of ways you can actually do that logic of choosing what you want to do and all the like. I think if everything is right, I can just turn my camera back on. Okay, so yeah, sorry, my internet was very slow, and I fear it's slow enough. Yeah, I fear the stream is already laggy, but anyway, um, yeah. So what we're going to do here is what we're going to come and do over here is we're going to create another object, and then we're going to call this guy obstacle, right? We want obstacles for the player to collide with. So I'm going to set this at position 0, 0, right at right at the center of the world. So why I made that a circle, I don't know. So I will just remove that component. Then where's my player? Oh, okay. Sprite renderer. And then the sprite I'm going to choose is a circle. So circle is not a sprite. So it's going to go into assets, create, folder, sprite. Then we're going to go create 2D, and then so if I can create a sprite that's consistent throughout, I can say the game mode, more like an actual image. So the sprite I had created there was technically just within our hierarchy, but if I do this, it's an actual image that you can go and edit elsewhere. But I'll just drag that and drop it over there. So sorry, this is for our player. Our player is supposed to be a circle, and then our actual obstacle there. Control. What am I doing? Oh, I made a copy of the player. Okay, so okay, so for our obstacle, I'm going to create an empty object and call it obstacle. Once again, obstacle, call it obstacle, and then in there I'm going to create, right click again, and then create a square. So I want to simulate more like cars coming down the lane and all that. So we're going to call that obstacle. We can just leave it as square, but yeah, I do recommend coming with a naming convention whenever you're working with these. And for the sake of simplicity, let's reduce our player down to 0.5 again, 0.5 by 0.5. So I'm going to set this as 0, 0, 0, 0. Wait, what am I doing? This is my player. Okay. Oh, I forgot to unlock. Okay, so this is very weird. Sorry, I forgot to unlock the property there. Yeah, so we're going to set this at 0, 0, 0. And then we're going to set this also at 0, 0, 0. And then 0.5. Okay, 0.75. Want the obstacles to be above big. So we're going to do that there. And then I'm just going to add a collider. Now, what is a collider? In games you have collisions, right? So you can have two objects colliding with each other and all the like. So whenever you're working whenever you want to collisions to occur in your game, you want to add the collider. So if I was to go under physics 2D, I have all these different all these different physics things that I can add, and these are just things that add physics to your object. But in this case, we want to add collision. So we're going to look for a collider shape that matches our shape. In this case, the box, excuse me, the box collider 2D matches our shape perfectly. So if you can faintly see, based on the stream quality, and I'm being told my stream quality might be causing some lags. Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, so we're going to have our object there. I'm going to have my object there, and then I've added a collider. And what a collider basically does is that it causes collisions between objects, right? It lets us have collisions between different objects. So I'm going to have this collision here, this collider over here. In fact, on our player, let's even add a circle collider. So just search circle collider 2D, and that will add a collider shape in the shape of a circle. So we're going to have collider there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a copy of this, add it here. So I'm going to add it all the way here, and then I'm going to make another copy, and then I'm going to add it here, right? So now we have these things that will be colliding with the player and all the like, but we need to make them move. So one way of doing this is just making them fall with gravity, right? We can make them fall with gravity, and the way you make objects get affected by gravity is basically just by going to add a component. You can add a component, and then you can say rigid body. So in this case, it's working with in a 2D environment. We're going to say rigid body 2D. We're going to add a 2D rigid body over there, and so meaning this rigid body will just fall with the motion over there. But there's a problem with doing it like this that I will talk about later. So, but basically, the problem with doing it like this is because we can't easily control the speed. Quite right, we can go and change the gravity scale and all that, but if we're going into the physics, not all the objects will have the same consistent speed. So making them fall with gravity wouldn't be a very good option. So another way of actually doing this is by us actually controlling the speed ourselves. So I'm just going to say obstacle. I'm going to add a new script called obstacle. Right, I'm going to add a new script called assuming I can spell it. Here's obstacle, and then I'm going to say create an add. Right, so I'm going to create that new obstacle. Okay. And then once I do that, I'll just go edit script, and that brings it back to an empty script. And there are a few things that we're going to want to do here. So the first thing is we want to be able to affect this object's velocity. Now, to affect the velocity, we go back and we add that rigid body 2D. So this rigid body lets us control the physics of an object, right? So any and all physics that this object has, we can control it using this. So be it adding force, gravity, etc. But we don't want this to fall based on gravity. So on the gravity scale, we're just going to say 0. So this is how much the game's total overall gravity will affect this object. In this case, 0. We don't want this gravity to affect this object at all, right? So I'll go in here and then I'll go back to my script. Now, since all those components are classes, and if you're used to object-oriented programming, you know classes are basically data types, right? So you can come and say public rigid body 2D, and this will create a field where I can drag and drop any rigid body from my scene onto this game object, and then I'm going to just call it RB, right? So I can come and do that, and then once Unity finishes the compiling and all that, we'll have a field over here that lets us just drag and drop any rigid body that we want to affect with this script, right? So we just come here and say obstacle, and then this, we're basically referencing this rigid body right here. It's the one we're referencing right here. But if you're like me, I'd be very forgetful, like what we did where we ended up locking the inspector to this object and all the like. Dragging and dropping things, especially if they're on the object itself, it might lead to some weird errors. So what we're going to do is that I'm going to make this private for now. I'm going to make it private, and then by making it private, essentially, once my script compiles, what you will notice is that this is no longer visible in the inspector. It's disappeared, but it's still in the script. It's still a variable in my script, but it's private, so it's not available in the inspector. To make it visible, you'd have to do something like serialize field. Serialize field will just makes it visible, but still gives it all the perks of being private, right? So what I'm going to do now is this is a very important function that you use almost always in Unity, which is the get component. And what this get component guide does is essentially it lets you get a component, and by component it means this component right here, even your script itself. It lets you get a component from any object, right? And the way you do this is you say, first of all, you want to assign that component when you get into a rigid body, right? Is equal to I'm just going to put this in a comment. You say the variable you want to come and assign it to is equal to get component, like that, get component, and then in here you put the type, right? You put the type of component that you want to come and get, and then just put your brackets like that, and this will just get a component. So you also do something like ref here, and ref is the game object or whatever you want to get it from. So in this case, since we'll be getting it from this current game object, we're just going to say RB is equal to, so I can say game object dot get component, so I can come and say game object dot get component like that, right? But since you know it's attached to this script, right? So I can just come and say game get component like that, and then over here I'm going to say rigid body 2D, and do that right there. So what this will do, it's the same as me writing game object get component and all that. So okay, it's game object get component, but without going through a lot of different things. So yeah, we can just say game object get component like that, and this will get this RB for us. So it will automatically populate that field, and it lets us avoid any errors because we're doing this programmatically and not manually. So we're avoiding any human error by doing this, right? And then I'm going to have another public void, and in fact float, and I'm going to call it speed. So this will be the speed at which we want to be moving these obstacles down, right? So we want to move these obstacles down based on a speed. So I'm going to say public float speed like that, and then after saying public float speed, when I say public float speed, we're going to say in the update. In the update, you want to be, in fact, not even in the update, right? Or in start, because you can do this in the update, but this will be constantly changing the speed. So once you want to set an object's velocity, you can say RB dot velocity. It's a variable and it's a vector 3, which is just it's just an x, y, and z value. So we're going to set that equal to a new to a new vector 2, right? And then that velocity now, instead of me actually going through this, I'm going to say transform dot Uh, we say vector 2 dot down. Vector 2 dot down is a constant value that just dictates the down position. In this case, the negative y-axis, the direction in the negative y-axis, which is just moving in this direction. So it's a constant thing and it's independent of an object's rotation or position in the world. It's just there. So vector 2 dot down, which just points towards the down position of our screen. Vector 2 dot down times our speed. So essentially, just by doing this, at the beginning, we're going to set the speed of this object equal to whatever speed we define here, right, in the downward direction. So, did I save that script? Okay, it is saved, and I think my time should almost be over. Yeah, I'm not really sure, but I think my time should be over. But anyway, let me just make this final change here. So, what we're going to do is that I'm going to run the game once. Hopefully, Unity does not crash. Yeah, please. This is yeah. So when I do this, nothing happens, right? We don't do anything, and give me okay. So much about that. Nothing happens when I do that, right? But then let me come and set the speed to something like 20. Okay, 20 was a bit too fast. 1 is it equal to 1? And yeah, as you can see, now we've set the velocity of our object to be moving at a set speed. And of course, collisions there, since there's a collision and all that, yeah, our item just stops. So we can move around and all the like. But yeah, so that thing always have a negative velocity. And since we stopped it at one point and it's not affected by gravity, whenever it collided with this, of course, it just stopped. We can always just come and say gravity scale there to give it some gravity, and this is why I didn't want to give gravity. You can do a lot of weird things with the gravity in Unity. You can give it -1, etc. But yeah, yeah. For now, I think my 1 hour is almost up. But in the next session, we're going to just wrap up this game. We're going to add a simple score counter and all the like. That's something very basic, and I'm also going to show you how we can randomly place these. So for instance, if you want one obstacle to appear where this is not available there, like so, you want it to appear something like that and all that. It's just randomizing all those different factors. Yeah, I'm going to show how we can do all of that in the next session. I think my allocated 1 hour is up. Yeah, but yeah, I hope my internet was not very choppy. Yeah, I hope my internet wasn't extremely bad. Let me even just stop sharing my screen. Yeah, I think my 1 hour is up. Bye everyone. I hope to see you in the next session. Yeah, bye.